Have you ever felt, deep down, that you see something most people don't? That the people around you live on a shallow surface, where conversations are predictable, gestures are rehearsed, and the truth is almost always hidden? Imagine being a silent observer of a world that seems to revolve around the superficial, and yet, despite everything, you perceive the invisible abyss that opens beneath humanity's feet. This intense perception, this ability to see beyond masks, empty words, and social illusions, is not a simple choice. It is a complex, lonely, and often painful journey. It is the burden and the gift of deep thinkers, those who cannot be content with easy answers and live questioning, feeling, and reflecting far beyond what is expected. Carl Jung, the great explorer of the human psyche, dedicated his life to understanding this phenomenon. He realized that deep thinkers inhabit a different frequency than most, a place where the light of consciousness illuminates both the beauty and the hidden shadows of self and the world. But what does it really mean to see beyond? It means seeing the hidden complexity in every relationship, the contradiction in every emotion, the paradox in every choice. It's realizing that reality is not a smooth, comfortable surface, but a tangle of meanings, pains, desires, and secrets that many prefer to ignore. Imagine the scene. You're in a meeting, a social gathering, or even a casual conversation. While everyone exchanges cliches and automatic laughter, you pick up on the signals others pretend not to see. Anxiety disguised as joy, fear masked as bravery, sadness hidden beneath a smile. This ability isn't just a heightened sensitivity. It's a gateway to the collective unconscious, where universal emotions and archetypes intertwine and influence each of us, often without us even realizing it. Jung drew attention to this invisible dimension that inhabits every human being, and that only a few can clearly perceive. He knew that this clarity comes at a price, the suffering of expanded consciousness, because seeing beyond is also carrying the weight of knowledge that most avoid. How many times have you felt alone, even when surrounded by people? How many times have your questions been met with discomfort or ignored? How many times has your silence been more profound than the words spoken around you? This is the condition of the deep thinker, to be present in the world, but with one foot in a place few know, the realm of intense introspection, creative doubt, and the relentless search for meaning. And it's not about intellectualizing or withdrawing emotionally. On the contrary, deep thinkers feel everything with an intensity that sometimes overwhelms them. They are like souls living between fire and water, heated by the passion for truth and dampened by the pain of misunderstanding. You, listening now, may recognize this feeling, that mix of fascination and anguish that comes with realizing the world is much larger and more complex than it appears. This is the gateway to the journey we will unravel together, a journey where thought is not just a tool, but a path to self-knowledge, where sensitivity is not a weakness, but a superpower, where solitude is not abandonment, but the cradle of authenticity. And Jung already knew all this. He bequeathed us a lens to see the mind that sees beyond, to understand the cost and beauty of this condition, to embrace the complexity that resides within you, and so many others who, like you, carry the burden and the gift of profound and transformative insight. Prepare to immerse yourself in this experience. This isn't a journey for those seeking easy answers or quick fixes. It's an invitation to look within, to embrace the shadows, to illuminate the forgotten corners of your psyche, and perhaps, to free yourself from the invisible bonds that limit your truth. Because a mind that sees beyond is not a gift for a select few. It's an open path for those who have the courage to face the unknown within themselves. And it is in this courage that true transformation resides. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to live on a different frequency, as if they're tuned into waves that go unnoticed by most? It's as if their world is composed of colors, sounds, and nuances that others can't even imagine. A heightened perception of life that transcends the obvious and ventures into the hidden. This is the reality of deep thinkers. They don't choose to be at this level of sensitivity and awareness. They are simply born there, with emotional antennae always on, picking up the subtlest signals, absorbing the invisible weight of the world around them. Sarah, amidst that banal conversation, didn't just hear the words, she felt what lay behind them. The fear hidden in the tone of voice, the desperation masked by laughter, the silence laden with secrets. It was as if her mind were in a parallel dimension, where small gestures held much greater meaning. Jung drew attention to this phenomenon when discussing the collective unconscious, a deep layer of the human psyche, where archetypes, symbols, and universal patterns that connect us reside. Those who can tap into this unconscious live on a different frequency, feeling the pulse of this invisible dimension that guides and shapes human emotions. But this frequency comes at a high price, the constant feeling of being out of place, of being a stranger in a world that prefers to keep its eyes closed to the shadows that inhabit each of us. Nietzsche, the philosopher of free spirits, described this condition well: souls that have broken the bonds of conformity, but who, because of this, walk alone in a desert of incomprehension. You, who now hear this voice, perhaps recognize this frequency within yourself, the weight of thinking too much, feeling too much, seeing too much. Know that you are not alone. There are others who vibrate in the same way, even if sometimes it seems like an invisible, scattered, silent network. And this connection is precious, because it is where the seed of transformation is born, the possibility of breaking with superficiality and creating something new, truer, deeper. If this reflection touches your heart, I invite you to sign up here so we can continue exploring this subtle frequency together, so you can find, through dialogue and acceptance, the strength to continue walking authentically. Because the deep thinker's journey is long, and support makes all the difference. The feeling beyond what most people perceive isn't just a blessing. It's also a burden few understand. It's a silent exhaustion, a constant overload that doesn't show in the body, but corrodes the spirit. Sarah walked the streets with this feeling clinging to her skin. Every emotion she absorbed from the people around her felt like a tight knot in her chest, an internal storm that left her tired but restless. It wasn't just her own emotional burden, it was that of others too, an avalanche she carried with her, unable to shut it off. Jung observed this phenomenon and called it psychic contagiousness, the ability to capture, feel, and absorb the emotional states of others as if they were one's own. It's like having a radio tuned to multiple stations, with no option to turn it off. For those who live this way, the outside world is a place of constant noise. A colleague's anxiety, a friend's sadness, a stranger's anger, all blend together in a sea of sensations that is often difficult to distinguish. And this mixture, if not managed well, can become a torment. The body ailing, the mind exhausted, the heart heavy. But there's another paradox in this sensitivity. It's precisely this capacity that makes so many turn to people like Sarah. Those who feel too deeply become the invisible support for those seeking understanding. They are attentive ears, silent shoulders, a shelter for unshared pain. But this help is almost never reciprocated. What's often received in return is empty silence, incomprehension, and a lack of care that wounds deeply. Thus, the deep thinker finds himself in a complex web of giving and not receiving, of welcoming and feeling alone. Jung emphasized the need to establish clear boundaries to preserve mental health. It's a hard and continuous learning process. How can we protect our own hearts without closing the door to the world? This protection isn't an act of selfishness, but of self-love and survival. It's the balance between being sensitive and being strong, between feeling deeply and preserving oneself. Sarah began to understand that she needed to create spaces for herself where she could breathe, process, and recharge. Moments of silence, introspection, and conscious solitude. This journey is difficult because society doesn't value this complexity. It prefers the quick, the superficial, the simple. And those who carry heightened sensitivity and emotional depth are often seen as difficult, exaggerated, or too much. But the truth is that this sensitivity is a source of strength, a channel for empathy, creativity, and transformation. Recognizing and embracing the weight of this sensitivity is a fundamental step towards making it an ally and not an enemy. Little by little, Sarah realized she didn't have to carry the world alone, that she could learn to filter, to choose where to invest her energy, to delegate to those who were willing to receive. And in this new awareness, she began to find a path to lightness, not empty superficiality, but a profound lightness that arises from acceptance and balance. This is the invisible burden, but also the hidden gift of deep thinkers, the ability to feel so much that it transforms its pain into compassion and its intensity into light. Have you ever felt like you're constantly wearing a mask? Not a theatrical mask, used to deceive, but a subtle disguise, a persona carefully constructed to survive in a world that values the shallow, the quick, the simple. Sarah knew this feeling well. From a young age, she realized that her way of thinking and feeling was too different, too intense for most. So she learned to soften, to shape her words, to hide her deepest thoughts behind smiles and ready-made answers. This mask isn't just a protection against the judgment of others. It's also an attempt to avoid rejection, isolation, and the fear of being too much for the world. But life with this mask takes its toll. It requires constant effort to maintain the facade, to control the emotions that want to overflow, to hide the doubts that bother you. Jung called this phenomenon mask fatigue, the emotional and psychological exhaustion that results from constantly living in a persona that is not your true self. This fatigue can manifest as profound tiredness, discouragement, a feeling of emptiness, and a disconnect with oneself. It's the price many pay for trying to fit in where they don't. But the paradox is that the more you wear the mask, the harder it becomes for others to see who you really are. And consequently, the harder it becomes to create genuine connections. How do you find intimacy when you're constantly hiding your depths? How do you feel like you belong when part of you is always locked behind an invisible wall? Sarah felt this distance with every social encounter, every superficial conversation, every uncomfortable silence after an attempt to open up about her inner world. The rejection didn't come in words, but in silent withdrawal, in averted glances, in a quick change of subject. Have you ever felt this? The feeling of being invisible, even when you're present. The loneliness that arises not from being alone, but from not being seen. This internal battle between wanting to be authentic and needing to protect yourself is one of the most difficult for those who live deeply. But acknowledging this struggle is already an important step. It's an invitation to begin to loosen the shackles, to question which masks are truly necessary and which only distance us from who we are. And if this reflection touches you, if you feel the weight of this fatigue, I invite you to leave a like. It's a simple yet powerful sign that you value this search for authenticity, that you're willing to challenge superficiality to find your truth. Because the world needs more people who allow themselves to be deep, even if it hurts, even if it scares them. And its depth, however tiring, is a treasure, a light that can illuminate paths most people don't even dare to explore. There's a silent, deep yearning in every thinker who feels too much and thinks too much. The desire to find their tribe. Those few who, when they cross your path, see beyond words and appearances, who recognize the intensity and complexity you carry. From childhood, this search begins to take shape. While other children seem to fit easily into games, conversations, and unspoken rules, the deep thinker feels out of place, different. The questions they ask, the emotions they feel, the way they perceive the world, all of this sets them apart. Nietzsche called these beings free spirits, wandering alone in a vastness few can explore. This early isolation can turn into loneliness, an unwelcome companion for those who long to belong. But what is this tribe? It's not a large group, nor necessarily a physical community. It's a space where authenticity is respected, where depth is valued, where silence also speaks. Sarah understood that her tribe wasn't found in large crowds, nor in the superficial relationships society often offers. Her tribe was made of moments, a look that understands, a word that welcomes, a gesture that respects the other's complexity. Finding this tribe requires patience and courage. Patience to accept that most people won't be ready for this intensity. Courage to keep showing up, even when rejection seems overwhelming. Jung teaches us that individuation, this process of becoming whole, includes this search for genuine connection. Not just any connection, but one born of the mutual recognition of shadow and light, pain and joy, doubt and certainty. A true tribe is where you can be whole, with your fears, your passions, your questions, without having to hide or diminish yourself. And although this tribe is rare, it exists, spread across small gatherings, deep friendships and relationships that defy time and superficiality. But until we get there, the path is paved with setbacks, pain and learning. Each rejection is an invitation to further deepen our relationship with ourselves and our own authenticity. And when you finally find your tribe, something inside you softens. The wounds begin to heal. The feeling of estrangement diminishes. You realize that your depth is not a curse, but a shared gift. The journey of the deep thinker is, above all, a journey towards true encounter with oneself and with others, who vibrate at the same frequency. Being a deep thinker is to possess a rare and complex skill, feeling the world not just for oneself, but for many. A heightened empathy that isn't limited to intellectual understanding, but translates into an almost physical absorption of others' emotions and pain. Sarah often found herself immersed in emotional seas that weren't her own, navigating internal storms caused by the anxieties, fears, and sadness of people close to her, and even strangers. This ability wasn't a choice, but a destiny imposed by her sensitive nervous system and her mind, deeply open to the inner world of others. Jung described this condition as a phenomenon that can lead to psychic contamination, the unconscious transmission of emotions between individuals, which for the deep thinker is like a constant tide that can drag him away from his own emotional stability. The cost of this heightened empathy is silent yet devastating. Emotional overload can cause a fatigue that no night's sleep seems to cure, an exhaustion that settles in the body and soul, an invisible weight that many don't understand. Furthermore, this intense connection with the suffering of others creates an often unbalanced dynamic. The deep thinker becomes the emotional refuge for many, the person who listens, welcomes, and supports, while their own pain is relegated to silence. Sarah knew this role as an emotional anchor was valued, but she also felt the loneliness that came from not having the space to be cared for. Her sensitivity, which made her so present for others, isolated her in her own deep needs. Jung warned of the importance of establishing healthy boundaries, not to close yourself off from the world, but to protect your own mental and emotional health. It's a delicate and ongoing learning process that requires self-knowledge, courage, and discipline. This protection is an act of self-love and respect for one's own humanity. For to continue offering one's light, it must be lit, vibrant, and not consumed by wear and tear. Empathy, when balanced, can be a powerful bridge of healing, connection, and transformation. When unbalanced, it can become a suffocating and exhausting burden. For the deep thinker, this fine line between feeling too much and caring for oneself is a constant battleground. But it's also a path to growth and emotional maturity. Sarah learned that self-care isn't selfish, but a vital necessity to sustain her capacity for empathy. She learned to recognize when she needed to step away, recharge, and seek her own healing. This learning allowed her sensitivity to become a source of strength, a channel for true compassion, and not a trap for suffering. It is this transformation that defines the deep thinker's journey, transforming the weight of heightened empathy into a power that lights the way for oneself and others. There's an internal battle many deep thinkers wage every day, a silent war between the urge to be authentic and the need to be accepted. This struggle is like a constant duel between two opposing forces within themselves, the desire to show the world their true essence, and the deep fear of rejection that this very truth can cause. From an early age, you learn that being different can be dangerous, that too many questions scare you, that intense feelings make you uncomfortable, that depth can alienate you. So you often begin to build a delicate armor, a persona that hides your true nature to avoid abandonment, criticism, and judgment. But this armor weighs heavily. It takes your breath away, and as much as it protects, it also limits you. It limits how much you can express yourself, how much you can surrender, how much you can be seen and recognized for who you truly are. Sarah felt this duality clearly. She knew that her authenticity was her greatest treasure, but also her greatest vulnerability. Therefore, at times, she chose to hide parts of herself to better fit in with the world. This choice, however, has profound consequences. When you deny parts of yourself to please others, you begin to distance yourself. It creates an internal void that no amount of praise or external approval can fill. Carl Jung wrote that individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires courage to face this conflict, to recognize that true acceptance can only come when you are true to yourself, even if it means losing a few people along the way. And that's the hardest part, understanding that not everyone will want or be able to see who you really are. That rejection often has nothing to do with you, but with the other person's fear and limitations. But even knowing this, the fear of loneliness can make you quiet, diminish, and fade away. You wonder, is it worth being authentic if it means being left out? The answer isn't simple, but the wisdom that comes from experience shows that authenticity is the only solid foundation for building true relationships. Relationships where love isn't a contract of exchange, but a profound recognition. The battle between being seen and being accepted never completely disappears. It follows the deep thinker like a constant shadow. But each time you choose authenticity, you strengthen your inner light. This choice transforms not only your life, but the world around you. Because authentic people attract others who also seek truth. They create circles of trust where being is valued above appearance. And you who are here now, who feel this conflict within yourself, I invite you to share in the comments, which part of this battle challenges you the most? Is it the fear of rejection, the desire to hide who you are, or the search for people who truly accept you? Knowing that we are not alone in this fight is already a powerful step towards freedom. Because the deep thinker's journey is not about perfection or approval, but about being whole, with all the contradictions, doubts, and intensities that entails. After treading tortuous paths, and struggling between the desire to reveal himself and the fear of isolation, the deep thinker finally comes face to face with the fundamental need for solitude, an encounter with oneself that goes beyond the simple absence of another. Solitude is a sacred space, a refuge where the soul can shed social masks, external demands, and the expectations that weigh down our shoulders. It is in this silent space that the profound process of self-discovery and healing takes place. Sarah discovered that although loneliness can sometimes feel like a prison, solitude is actually an opportunity, a chance to hear her own voice, which so often gets lost in the noise of the world. Jung, in his wisdom, deeply valued these moments of introspection. For him, individuation, the process by which a person becomes a whole integrated being, requires this inner retreat. It is in silence that the fragmented pieces of the self begin to come together. This inward journey can be painful. It involves facing personal shadows, those hidden parts of oneself that have been denied, repressed, or forgotten. It involves embracing the complexity of one's own being, with its lights and darknesses. Contemporary culture, however, often portrays solitude as something negative, synonymous with isolation or abandonment. Therefore, those who turn inward can feel even more displaced. But the truth is that conscious solitude is a state of presence with oneself, a deep communion that strengthens and regenerates. It is in this space that the deep thinker learns to separate their own emotions from those absorbed from the external world. This is where they can unload the invisible weight of heightened empathy and rediscover their essence. Furthermore, solitude offers fertile ground for creativity to flourish, for ideas to mature, for the spirit to be renewed. Sarah realized that these moments of silence are not escape, but resistance. Resistance to conformity, to superficiality, to losing touch with one's truest self. In this inner alchemy, solitude transforms emptiness into fullness, pain into learning, fear into courage. And by cultivating this sacred space, the deep thinker finds the strength to move forward in the external world, facing difficulties, maintaining authenticity, and creating meaningful connections. Solitude, therefore, is not the end of the journey, but an essential step for the journey to continue with more clarity, courage, and integrity. It is the cradle where true freedom of being is born, the soil where authenticity and the silence that echoes the deepest wisdom of being flourish. The paradox experienced by the deep thinker is curious, almost cruel. At the same time as he feels an intense need to be seen, understood, and accepted in his entirety, he experiences an almost absolute invisibility. This invisibility is not a physical absence, but a feeling of being ignored in your depths, as if your true self were shrouded by a translucent veil that only a few can penetrate, and many don't even try. Sarah was well aware of this paradox. She walked among people, shared spaces, participated in conversations, but felt that her essence remained hidden, like a poorly kept secret that no one cared to discover. At the same time, this same sensitivity made her exposed. Every emotion felt was an open door to the world, vulnerable to judgment, rejection, and misunderstanding. This constant exposure generated emotional exhaustion that could not be ignored. Thus, the deep thinker lives a delicate dance between being invisible and being overly exposed, between wanting to be recognized and fearing the consequences of that recognition. Jung tells us about tragic authenticity, the tension between the desire to be true and the fear of the isolation that such truth can provoke. This duality creates a continuous state of alertness and self-observation. You become a master of emotional camouflage, learning to hide your depths so as not to scare others, to soften your words so as not to be rejected, to diminish your needs so as to be accepted. But this adaptation comes at a cost. It can lead to a loss of your inner voice, a disconnect with yourself, and the feeling that you're living a life that isn't truly yours. At the same time, this paradoxical invisibility generates a loneliness that is not simply being alone. It is the loneliness of not being truly seen. And this kind of loneliness can be deeply painful, as it strikes at the root of human existence, the need to be recognized as a unique and complete being. But there is also a beauty in this paradox, for it is precisely this dance that challenges the deep thinker to seek balance between revealing and protecting, between opening up and preserving. Learning to navigate this dance is a fundamental part of the path to individuation, the process of becoming whole. And it is this ability that allows you, despite the perceived invisibility, to find moments of true encounter, where your depth is welcomed, your vulnerability is valued, your authenticity is celebrated. These encounters are rare, but transformative. They restore hope, nourish the soul, and renew the courage to continue being who you are, even when the world seems unprepared for it. Sarah experienced these moments, and you, reading these words, can too. The key is to stay true to yourself, even when it seems like you have to walk alone, because in the end, true visibility begins within. It is the silent recognition that you exist in all your complexity and deserve to be seen that way, not by chance, but by essence. We have reached the apex of this intimate and profound journey, where the light that has always dwelt within you finally reveals itself in all its strength and beauty. This light is not a fragile and fleeting flame, but a permanent torch, an essence that resists the weight of doubt, the pain of loneliness, and the storms of rejection. Sarah discovered that this light isn't external, doesn't depend on others' approval, but arises from radical self-recognition and acceptance. It's the courage to embrace all parts of oneself, the light and the shadow, the strength and the vulnerability, the certainty and the doubt, and allow them to coexist in harmony. Carl Jung bequeathed us the concept of individuation, this sacred process by which we become whole, integrating all facets of our personality. It's a path that requires courage to face the unknown within oneself, to embrace what was previously denied or rejected, to live authentically without fear. And this authenticity, though challenging, is what makes your presence in the world indispensable. It's the beacon that guides others who, like you, seek meaning, depth, and truth, in a world that often prefers the superficial and the fleeting. You who have come this far, who have heard these words and felt your heart beat faster, know that you are part of this awakening movement, an invitation to live without masks, to speak your truth, to shine in your complexity and uniqueness. If this journey touched you, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, where we journey together in the search for depth, authenticity, and self-knowledge. Here you'll find not only reflections and learnings, but also a community that understands the challenges and beauties of being a deep thinker. Don't forget to leave a like, a simple gesture that strengthens this network of connections and allows more people to find this welcoming space. And if you feel like it, share in the comments which part of this journey resonated most with you. Which insight was a wake-up call for something that had been dormant. Your voice matters, your experience is valuable, and it can illuminate the path for many others. Being a deep thinker is a gift, but also a challenge that requires perseverance and self-love. By choosing to walk this path, you become a guardian of truth, a beacon of light for those still searching for their place in the world. Feel privileged to be here, to allow yourself this transformation, to be part of the tribe of those who see beyond. The world needs the brilliance that only you can offer, intense, true, unmistakable. And remember, your light is enough. You are enough, just as you are. May this journey be just the beginning of a life lived in fullness, integrity, and deep connection with yourself and others.